now we're ready to join our color. Because we flipped our work, make sure you're working on the pretty side. And we're going to be working into this chain 2 space right after our stitch marker. So there's our stitch marker and our chain 2 space. Drop that white yarn, we're finished with it, or whatever color you used down here, but leave it attached. You have your stitch marker there. Put your hook into the chain 2 space. Grab your new color yarn. I'm going to use this Cobalt, and bring it through the chain 2 space and slip stitch with both strands to secure. Drop your tail and chain 2 to get your height. 1 and 2, so that counts as a chain 3. If you join your yarn in a different way, join your yarn and chain 3. Now we're going to make 2 more double crochets into the same space. So wrap your yarn, go into the space, grab your yarn and bring it back. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. So we'll do that again. Wrap your yarn and put it into the space. Grab your yarn and bring it back. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. Wrap your yarn and take off 2. So our chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and then we did 2 more double crochets, so that's a total of 3 double crochets. We're going to make 3 double crochets in every space going around. I've dropped my tail, so we'll sew it in with a needle later. And 2 more double crochets into this space. 1, 2. So work your way around, making 3 double crochets into each chain 2 space. Don't do any chains in between. All you're doing is a nice row of double crochets, 3 double crochets into each chain 2 space all the way around. And I will meet you when you get back to your stitch marker. Here we are back around. So we are just going to slip stitch our tile color to the top of the chain 3. So just slip stitch to join. Now I'm going to get a stitch marker and put a stitch marker in this loop. And I'm just going to let it drop down. I'm going to get my base color, my white. Pull that a bit. And put this nice loop from this first stitch marker on my hook. So now I'm working with my white yarn, whatever you've used for the base of your bag and your grout of your tiles, and I'm going to chain 1, chain 2, and chain 3. So that counts as my first double crochet. Now I'm going to chain 1, which is the top of my V, and 1 more double crochet into that same spot, that same stitch at the bottom there. So that's my first V-stitch. Now straight into the next single crochet over here, this white little bit there, you're going to go in and make another V-stitch, which is double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet into the same stitch. Oops. So there is a V. You see that V there? That's what we're going to do into each single crochet all the way around. So wrap your yarn, go into that single crochet, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2, wrap your yarn and take off 2, chain 1, and the same thing again. Wrap your yarn, go into the same stitch, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2, wrap your yarn and take off 2. Now you're going to go straight into the next single crochet, no chaining in between, double crochet, chain 1 at the top of the V, and another double crochet into the same single crochet. So your white yarn is touching your white yarn, basically, or whatever color you're using, it's touching. So work your way around, 1 V-stitch into each single crochet, and I will meet you when we get back here to join. I've done my V-stitch, so I'm just going to slip stitch to the 3rd chain, so 1, 2, 3, keeping 2 loops on my hook, slip stitch to join. Now this yarn I'll put in my stitch marker, and just pull it down so it behaves itself. So now I'm dropping my white tail and I'm going to start working again with my tile color, which is blue. Putting your hook into this V stitch, into the space of the V stitch, grabbing the loop of your blue yarn or your whatever color you're using for your tile, taking your stitch marker off, grabbing your blue yarn and pulling the loop to the front. Now chain 3 for your first double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Wrap your yarn and into that same space make 2 more double crochets, because your chain 3 counts as your first double crochet. And then into each V-stitch, so not on top of your previous tile, but in between, in this V-stitch, this chain 1 space, which is your V, you make 3 double crochets into each one, going all the way around your work. So there's 1. Now jump straight over, no chaining, and make 3 double crochets into this next V-stitch. Well, there's our third one. So we've done 3 now. Now scoot straight over and into the next one, 3 double crochet. So do this all the way around and I will meet you back when we're going to join up this round. So I'll meet you when you get back to over here. So here we are ready to join. I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 and put a stitch marker into this loop. Let's leave that any which where. My yarn out of the way. Now back with my white, actually this way, it's not tangled up. With my white, I'll pull this a bit bigger and put my hook back onto this loop, or this loop back onto my hook. And now with this one, I am going to chain 3, which is going to count as my first double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3, and a chain 1, which is the top of my V. So a total of chain 4. Wrap your yarn and into the same stitch, keeping all that other yarn behind you, make a double crochet. So now we're right back to doing the same as we did before, which is making a V-stitch into each of these single crochets. So wrap your yarn, pull it through, grab your yarn and take off 2, wrap your yarn and take off 2, chain 1, and another double crochet into the same spot. So that is again your V-stitch. So one of these into each single crochet, which is this white color coming through the bottom of that space. V-stitch into each single crochet going around. This will be the same for every round in between your tiles. So every grout line or every line of your main color is going to be like this. A V-stitch into each single crochet. So do that all the way around and I'll meet you again for one more round of tiles. So I'm ready to join my V-stitches again. So I'm going to join to the third chain. So the third V, 1, 2, and 3. Push my hook in, getting 2 loops on my hook. Bring the yarn back and bring the yarn through. So this is the stitch I'm going to keep on my stitch count or my stitch marker. So put that one on. Into this stitch here, this V, I'm going to put in my hook and grab my blue loop. Take my stitch marker off for now and get my white yarn out of the way. Bring my loop through to the front. And now we're going to be doing our tiles again, so our 3 double crochets in each space. So to get your height for your first double crochet, you chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. My yarn on this side. So wrap your yarn, go into this space, and make 2 more double crochets. So your chain 3 counts as your first double crochet. So there we are, ready with our blue. So now with our blue, we go all the way back into the V's. Make sure you're in the V's, not on top. Only into the V stitches. 3 double crochets into each V, no spacing in between. I will meet you up to join. So same way, I'm going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain, getting 2 loops on my hook, and bring it through and bring it through. And I'm going to chain 1 to secure and then just cut my yarn. Pull through my tail, and that one is finished. So I'm just going to weave it in through the back loops so I don't have to use a darning needle later. So just through the back loop of the stitch, around and around and around, once into each stitch. That'll just hold it in place, and then I'll go back 2 stitches. 1 and 2. Oh, and 3. I'll get it to the back side. There. Now back to our white yarn. Pull that stitch marker up and put that yarn on your hook. Now I'm going to chain 3 for my first double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1 for the middle of your V. Wrap your yarn and go into the same stitch to make a double crochet and complete this first V stitch. So now go back along your work. So into this, the top of this double crochet, make your V stitch. So double crochet, chain 1 into the same stitch for another double crochet. So make these V stitches all the way around, and I'll meet you here when we change color. Here we are ready to join again. So I'm going to slip stitch into the same spot, the 3rd chain, which is here, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join, pull up a loop, and put my stitch marker back on that loop, and that'll just hang down in the front. Now I'm going to be changing my color. You can change your color as often as you like. So I have my new color ready. I'm just going to join it the same way, pretending my yarn was still hooked at the back. I'm going to put my hook into the V stitch, the space of the V stitch, put a loop of my new color onto my hook, bring it forward, and slip stitch both strands to join. Then I will drop my tail and chain 2 more, 1 and 2, and that will count as my first double crochet, those 3 chains. So wrap your yarn. I'm going to go over that tail for this cluster or this shell and make 2 more double crochets, and now I'm going to go around just like we always have, 3 double crochets into each V stitch, then slip stitch to join, put a stitch marker on your stitch, and start back up with the white. So now continue going around and building up till you have the sides about the same height you want for your bag. We'll also be putting a band of single crochet at the top, so factor that into how many more rows you want to make for yours. So keep going, and I'll see you when you have the height that you want. I'm going to do 1 more row, but I wanted to show you what I'm going to do on my last round of bobbles to make a little button so I can pinch these edges shut like that in there, just so it's square. Hard to see, but square when you are using it, and then it'll be optional to make it wide like a big tote. But if you don't need it nice like wide all the time, I'll show you how to do that. So locate the corners on your base on the long side, see where your stitches are, and then pinch. See, there's my corner. So I'm just going to pinch up and follow those bobbles to the top, which is here. So I'd put a little stitch marker there. And same on this other side. Find the corner and then pinch those bobbles all the way up and put a stitch marker there. And same on, let me just take out my extra yarn and my tray bottom. So then on this side, do the same thing, pinch it up, find your corner, and then pinch it up to follow those bobbles to the top and put in a stitch marker. So now I have my 2 stitch markers here, so I'm going to line those up together, and that is going to be, this is the extra yarn from the side. So then when we are using the bag will be square. So that's that side done. Well, let's leave it. You can see how it's squared now. So I'll leave that one there. I'll just poke my needle through to hold it there while I show you the other side. So this side I've done the same thing. Put it in. Well, find your corner and then trace your bobbles up and find your corner and trace your bobbles up. So that's like that, and now my bag is square. The sides are as square as the bottom edges here. Now I'm going to be making a bobble button, like a popcorn stitch. So move your stitch markers over from these corners here. Let me just get new stitch markers. So I don't want to make my popcorn right on the edge, so I'm going to make it into the next one over, which is here. So I'm going to make a popcorn into this stitch here, into that V-stitch. And on the back side, I'm going to mark the same corresponding V-stitch. So not the one right closest to the edge, but the second one in. So those two are matched up. These ones on the edge I can take out now because that was just to line it up. And this side I've already done. So I've put my stitch marker here. So I'm going to be making a popcorn on one side here and the loopy chain on the other side over here. I hope that makes sense. So I'll just keep going around making my 3 double crochets into each V-stitch until I reach the popcorn. Into this next V, we're going to make our popcorn, which is a bit different than a regular popcorn. So make your first double crochet and make your second double crochet, and then wrap your yarn, and now you're going to be doing your double crochets, well, I'm going to do half doubles, around this post. So put your hook in between those stitches, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off all 3 loops on your hook, and you're going to do that again. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 times. Pull up your loop. Put your hook into this the top of the first half double crochet. Put your loop back on your hook. Tighten it down to the same size as your hook and pull it through that first half double that you made, and chain 1 to secure. You want to do that a bit tightly. You don't want to be loose making that sideways popcorn. Now wrap your yarn and make 1 more double crochet into that space. So there is your first sideways popcorn, or your bag closure. And now 3 double crochets into each stitch until you reach your next stitch marker. And this is optional. You don't have to make the popcorns if you don't want to close your bag just with crochet. You could also put snaps on the side or buttons or any other thing you'd like, but this is a quick fix for people who want to make a bag from yarn at home with the things you have at hand. So I've reached my next stitch marker. This is going to be my second bobble. So wrap your yarn, make 1 double crochet. Wrap your yarn, make your second double crochet right into that V-stitch, into the space of the V-stitch. Now wrap your yarn, and you're going to be making 6 half doubles onto this post. I would like to do more. My yarn is very chunky, but in my head I would do, like, for whatever your yarn is, do as many as you can to get the bobble the size that you want. Nothing wrong with a big bobble. So I can fit 6 into mine because my yarn is quite chunky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get my last one in there. But I would do more if I could. So pull up your hook and into this first half double crochet with the little guy on the side, put your hook in, put your loop back on your hook, tighten it down, and bring your hook through that stitch. And chain 1 snugly to secure. Wrap your yarn and 1 more double crochet into that space. So that is your second bobble on your side of the bag, and I'll just show you here a little demonstration of, so on the other side we'll make a chain, and that will just hook onto this bobble, and because we did it around the post, it has something to hold on to. So it's up to you, but you can see how a bigger bobble would be, you know, bigger the better for how that goes, but it holds on because of how we put it onto that double crochet. So keep going all the way around with your making your 3 double crochets into each stitch. You don't have to do anything on this side. I can even remove that now. You're just going to go all the way around. So I finished my row, my last row of tiles, and the next row of the white of your grout line or your V-stitches is a little bit different. So I just wanted to show you that. So put your white yarn or your grout yarn or your base color yarn back on your hook and chain 3 like you normally do. 1, 2, 3. But instead of doing our extra chain for a V-stitch, you just make 1 more double crochet. So there's a double crochet. So we're just going to do 2 double crochets in between each tile all the way around, and that will make it look very similar to what we have going on below. See how that looks the same now as the ones below. And then our next row we're going to do an increase as we work our way along, because we're actually losing a stitch on this round because we're not doing the chain in the middle. We're just doing the double crochets. So 2 double crochets in between each tile, and I'll meet you when we join. I've done my 2 double crochets into this last space between these tiles, into that stitch. So I'm going to go straight over and slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. Get my hook in, there we are, to join. So just a slip stitch and a chain 1. Now we're going to go along making single crochets. Well, you can do single crochets or half doubles, whatever you'd like. I am going to do single crochets because they match the bottom. So I've done my chain 1 for my height. Now in between, it's not a V-stitch, but in between these 2 doubles, I'm going to do a single crochet also. So a single crochet into this stitch. So I did a chain 1, and I'm going to do a single crochet into that stitch there, the same stitch. So single crochet. So my first single crochet is a real single crochet, and I'll put a stitch marker on it. I'll use this pink one so you can see it. So I know when I'm coming around, that is my first real single crochet. And now in between these two stitches into the space, I'm going to make a single crochet. And so that's 1, 2, into this next stitch I do 1, into the space I do 1, into the stitch I do 1. So we're adding a stitch in between, like where our V-stitch used to be. Okay, so I've gone into this one. So I'm going to go into the stitch, single crochet, that's this stitch I went into. Now into the space, single crochet, and into this double crochet, a single crochet. So single crochet, into the space, single crochet, into the stitch, single crochet, into the stitch, single crochet, into the space, single crochet, into the stitch, single crochet. So you're just adding back the stitch that we took out when we did this last round of grout or tile lines. So work your way around, adding 1 stitch into every V-stitch space, that's not a V-stitch, and 1 into each stitch of every double crochet. So every double crochet gets a single crochet, and every space in between the 2 double crochets gets a single crochet. I hope I said that right. So into the stitch, into the space between, into the stitch, into the stitch, into the space in between, into the stitch, into the stitch, into the space in between, into the stitch. Keep working all your way around, and I'll meet you when we join. So here we are ready to join. I know where I'm going to join because I put that stitch marker in, so that's why we put it in, so we don't have to wonder now. So I finished my last single crochet into this double crochet, so I'm going to push my hook in under both those loops, tighten my yarn, slip stitch to join. So there is our slip stitch. Now I'm going to chain 1 and single crochet into that first stitch, pull up my loop, and into that stitch I'm putting my stitch marker back. So I know that's my first single crochet. And now it's easy. Now we're just going to do 2 more rounds of single crochet. 1 into each stitch all the way around, nothing hard at all. So we've chained 1. I'm going to make half double crochets for this next round. So wrap your yarn, go into the same stitch, bring your yarn back, wrap your yarn, and take off all 3. So that's a half double. And I can put my stitch marker into that first stitch just to make sure I know where it is when I come back around. Put your hook back on and wrap your yarn. Make 1 half double crochet into each stitch going all the way around. So wrap your yarn and take off all 3. Wrap your yarn, put your hook into the stitch, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off all 3. So do this all the way around and I'll meet you to join. Now this is my last stitch that needs a half double crochet, so I'll half double into that, and this one already has. So I'm going to slip stitch into that first half double crochet to join. So you can continue doing as many rows of half double as you'd like to get the height the same as your border, or the height you'd like for your border at the top of your bag. The bottom of my bag has 6 rows of single crochet. So in my head I'd like about the same on the top, but it's personal preference, it's up to you. For the sake of this tutorial, I am going to do I'm going to show you how to make the now I'm going to show you how to make the handles.